Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Wiz podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
Party people, this is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to a writer, an actor, a director, and he's also a former WWE referee. He is the one and only Aaron Goose Mahoney. Aaron, what's going on, bro?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
No, the pleasure's all mine, and it's so funny because I could think of a time where I might have seen you. There was a time where my wife is from Bakersfield, and our son was born there as well. And for those who don't know about like the Bakersfield area WWE loop, well, the Rabobank Arena, which it was called at the time, it's called something else. It was right next to the Marriott, right? So basically, if you knew what time checkout was on TV tapings, you could see some of the luminaries of the wrestling business. So I think I might have brushed you and John Cone, and you guys are cool, and then you guys had to do whatever. So we've kind of met, but briefly, in Bakersfield.
Very likely, and one of my favorite venues, because like we talked about before we came on air, I love Los Angeles, and that's the end goal. But Staples Center for me was like just an amazing place to be, and just Kobe and all the legacy, Michael Jackson's funeral, like it was such a cool place to perform for me personally.
Yeah, man. Which it's kind of cool your run because you do so many things behind the scenes, right? I mean, aside from the acting, right? You write, you direct, and everything, and then you kind of got ushered into this like very public on-camera role with OVW and WWE, and probably even before that, So, like, how does this like entertainment side of you? When does this appear as a youngin?
It's really at a young age. As I just talked about, I mentioned Michael Jackson. I love Michael Jackson. So I was there when he was growing up, or when I was growing up, he was Thriller and, Billie Jean and everything like that. So I would always do like impersonations of him and, wear the red jacket, the Thriller jacket, and, anytime I could perform. But then I had, at a young age, I started doing plays, the school plays, and this, that, and the other, and just kind of kept that going. And then when it came time to select what I wanted to do for a college major, I was like, well, theater. It's not the most promising career, but neither is getting into wrestling business in any capacity. So you got to take risks in life, and that was kind of my early I took.
No, so I mean, and whereabouts were you? I mean, I'm assuming you didn't grow up in LA.
Oh no, I'm from Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I'm not a big sports person, but our claim to fame is the Little League World Series. Mm-hmm. Summer when you turn on in August, not the last summer unfortunately because of the pandemic, but that's my hometown, and that's always like a great institution to visit, and see growing up, and these Little League kids are just so talented, and it was a great place to grow up. But I went to college in Pennsylvania. I went to a college probably about 45 minutes east of Pittsburgh called IUP, which is confusing to people. It's Indiana University of Pennsylvania because the name of the city is Indiana, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So like I'd tell people I went to college, they go, well, is that in Indiana or Pennsylvania? I'm like, well, kind of both.
Hey, I mean, where I'm in Cali, I'm probably 2 hours away from Paris, California, which is nothing like the other one in France.
Right, no Eiffel Tower there.
Not at all. And I mean, with all the baseball, the Little League World Series happening, was there ever maybe a dalliance in playing ball?
No, I really wasn't athletic. Just be truthful with you. I did karate, and I really liked the discipline of martial arts, and that's really sports wise, really all I did, and to be truthful with you, even in high school, I didn't do like the high school plays and the musicals and this, that, the other. But I did community theater, my town. But yeah, I just never, I don't know. I was kind of, on the edge of like, if I want to actually pursue this or not. So, but then the more like I looked at it and kind of looked at myself, I'm like, yeah, this is something I enjoy. So, let's put the most effort into it. So I started doing more local plays and things of that nature. So, it worked out well. I got a lot of great friends out of the college experience. I got a lot of great acting opportunities. So it was a good segue to sports entertainment, if you will.
So and it's kind of funny because like you were talking about Michael Jackson and the Thriller jacket, and I mean a lot of kids in that time, male, female, what have you, were kind of in that deal. I mean, look no further than Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's Alfonso Ribeiro, right? He was like the deal. He was the kid wearing the Thriller jacket in the Pepsi commercial, and
Yeah.
that's it, right? So at what point was it kind of concurrent, your kind of love for pro wrestling with the acting and what have you? Were they concurrent?
Yeah, easily at a very young age. I'm dating myself here, but I've been there since WrestleMania 1. And so I just turned 45. I'll just put it out there. So kind of hard to admit, but yeah, I watched wrestling at a very young age, and just something about it, and just the theatrics and the entertainment aspect of it definitely lured me in. But the physicality and the characters, and it was just like, it's kind of cliche, but it was for me, it was like comic book people coming to life, and it's like, wow, you can actually pay a ticket and go see these people. So I was enthralled from an early age, and like tell you how pathetic in a way my obsession was as a kid. My neighbor has actually, I think to this day, still at my parents' house, has a satellite. He does like the CB radio, I think it's called.
Yeah.
But he has like this tower in his yard, and I'd watch primetime wrestling with my personal favorite of all time, Bobby Heenan and Gorilla, hosting it. And if this guy was on his CB radio thing or whatever, I don't even know if that's what it's called, but some radio,
Yeah.
like it would disrupt the channel that it played on. So you could hear it, you had the audio, but it was all like the picture
Scrambled.
scrambled, like you're watching porn or something. I'm
Yeah.
watching wrestling, and so yeah, it was. I remember my father would come in and he'd be like, "Oh, you can't even see this. Like, go to bed." And I said, "Well, I know what Randy Savage looks like, and I know what these characters look like, and I hear the commentary, so I know what's going on from watching enough wrestling." But that's just an example of how diehard I was. But yeah, I just from an early age, I was just like, that's all I did. I just watch wrestling and report it wrestling, and was just obsessed with it basically.
Bro, I know the story, and it's funny because like I could distinctly remember the almost exact same scenario playing out with my dad and I, but it was like a WWF in and out in your house, right? And you could kind of you saw the squiggles and everything like that, and you kind of knew who each and I still, to this day, in addition to like the other music that I love, like the theme music, all of Jim Johnston's stuff and whatever.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I knew the theme music, so I could picture in my head and kind of like fantasy book what was going on with Gorilla and Heenan, or later Ross and Lawler, like kind of envision it in my head like what was going on.
Exactly. It's like a radio show kind of thing. It's like, people, I guess they probably still do, but they listen to sports on the radio, and, they don't have to have the visual, but the visual definitely helps when walking out with the sequined robe. You want to see what his robe looked like that week,
Yeah.
whatever. But it kind of, I guess, was, roundabout way, was kind of like way to be like more creative. Like, oh, I'm imagining, what this actually looks like, But thank God for like the technology we have now and the network and YouTube. You can go back and like be like, oh, I remember listening to that match, but I never actually saw it. So I spent a lot of evenings rewatching a lot of hits from the past, if you will.
No, so and it's funny because you growing up in the Pennsylvania, right? That was a stronghold, during the territory of Northeast wrestling. That was Bruno Sammartino on top. That was kind of the glory era of Vince McMahon Senior. Did you catch any of that?
What's funny is, they did a lot of tapings in Allentown. That's
Mm-hmm.
their hub for taping the shows and everything. And they did a lot of Saturday Night's main events in Hershey. I think the most famous one was where Honky Tonk Man did the guitar shot on Savage. That was, and I was like, after I saw it was in Hershey because they already recorded it, I'm like, why did I know that? And my parents were always encouraging. For one of my birthdays, it was in March, which is WrestleMania season. They got me tickets for WrestleMania 5. So that was like the first WrestleMania I got to see Savage Hogan, and it was tremendous. And from Plaza, when they had to walk down those horrible
Steps, yeah.
horrible arena, the performance for the boys, I'm sure, but it was just so cool, like just to be part of that, spectacle of Mania, of course, but just kind of on a scaled down size, but yeah, it was, my parents never really liked it, but they didn't discourage me from liking it. I got LJN figures, which I still collect, mint on card to this day. I might be an old man, but I'm still a kid at heart. So I have like, I'm like, I'm only a few away from having the entire collection mint on card. And off air, I'll try to dig some out and take some pictures because I have some oddities. Like, for example, I got a Mean Gene Okerlund, and
Yeah.
he doesn't have the mustache. And it's like, wow, like how random. Like, just these misprints or something's mislabeled. Like the guy in the package, the sticker says somebody else, it's not them. So that goes a little bit more on eBay or whatever. But
Yeah.
I got a little bit too obsessive with collecting LJNs, and one day I want to display them, but I haven't yet, unfortunately. But they're in a secure spot anyway.
Which I gotta. I mean, this kind of ties right into your time with WWE. Did you guys, you and Hawkins and Ryder, kind of get into any of it? Like,
A little bit.
okay,
It was more as Dylan, his Hornswoggle. We'd go in the stands and I'd be like, oh, I just got like, the single card Davy Boy Smith, like, which is, like a rare figure, but, God, I'm coming off like such a nerd right now. But, oh, well. But yeah, it's like, but yeah, like I like those guys. They were in OVW with me and
okay,
OVW with me. So, but yeah, we'd talk every once in a while, and they'd sometimes see. I was and still am friends with Roadkill,
hmm,
and he was my eBay guy because he's so good at it, and he runs his own eBay store and sells the more modern figures mainly, but. He was like, "Oh man, I got you a great deal on this figure," and I'm like, "All right, here's my card number, just book it." And he'd bring the figure to OVW, and we'd be in the locker room before TV tapings, and he'd be like, "Oh, okay, here it is," and I got it, and Hawkins and Ryder would be like, "What'd you get there?"
yeah.
Back off my figure, But yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess it's a two-part question, right? What is the holy grail for collectors, and then which is the prize possession in terms of your collection of LJN and other figures?
Mine personally, and there's some other ones that are, but mine personally, to answer your first question, is the Ultimate Warrior. That was like when I got that was my crown jewel. But one of the figures I don't have that I just haven't come across, or the price is too high. And what's crazy about it too is a lot of fans are now that are younger or even my age that want to kind of go back to their childhood and be like, oh, I never had that figure. But Bret Hart on a single card, that's my now crown jewel that I don't have. I have Jim Neidhart and I have the Hart Foundation in the box together, but I don't have single card Bret. And there's a few variants I don't have. There's
Hmm.
a few like early tag team sets I don't have, like Sheik Volkov, like
Yeah.
Hogan, and those are pretty much attainable. They're getting more fans that like get into the LJN universe and start collecting. They're more prone to, kind of swipe those off of eBay. And, I don't really want to buy any more figures until I can display the ones I already have. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, for me, Bret Hart single card and Brown Boots Piper, which is a variant. God, I'm a nerd. those are the two that I really need to kind of even out my collection a little more.
And it's even, maybe I'm going on a geek tip, but I think it's those two. It just so happens those two are cousins.
Yeah,
Piper and the Hearts are they're
yeah,
cousins.
yeah. It's a little bit of a weird story. I'm friends with Harry Smith, Bulldogs kid, and I've kind of asked him about that a little bit. And I don't really remember the true definition of it, but Piper for me, like I mentioned Heenan. Heenan,
Hmm.
even as a kid, I was more prone to like heels than baby faces. I didn't know the difference then, but for me as a kid, the heels were like larger than life and just like, you know, so fun to watch and their promos and stuff. So like I was always a huge fan of Heenan. Like I think on remember they did that WrestleMania where they brought they did the Legends Battle Royal
Yes.
and they brought Mean Gene and Bobby to do the commentary,
Yes.
and it was like Bobby. Um, it was I think Paul Heyman said it best. He said, and I'm aging myself again, but Johnny Carson. I think everyone knows Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Old talk show host, the Tonight Show. He goes, Bobby Heenan is the Johnny Carson of wrestling. I said, what a great description of Bobby Heenan. But I loved Heenan. That's why I sat through all those primetime episodes. Those matches were, live event shows, and
Hmm.
just they went to a draw. And those wrestling content on those shows was kind of garbage and weak, but just Heenan and Monsoon's like, back and forth and the quips that Bobby would make. And he was like that. I was fortunate enough to meet him in OVW, and it was right before he started getting the throat cancer, and following him around like a puppy dog. Uh, and he was still sharp as a tack, man. Like just cracking jokes and whatever. And like, so like to circle back, like Savage and Heenan and Piper, especially even Piper's babyface run. Uh,
Yeah.
he was still a heel. He's like Stone Cold in the '90s. He was character wise a heel, but he was a baby face because he was so over, So like all those colorful. That's why I collect this collection. Really, it's not all nostalgia, and that's really why I watch like old WF matches and promos and all the Mean Gene outtakes. If you ever seen that, that's
Yes,
yeah,
yes. When the WrestleMania sign goes down, and I think Nikolai is singing in Russian, and he's just busting a gut.
yeah,
Oh, those are fucking great.
yeah. He's like, "Yo, you're the shits."
Yeah.
But yeah, just for me, like I'm a nostalgic person. I like the time frame I grew up in. Not to disparage anything that's happening now, but I just for me like wrestling was characters. Like you wouldn't walk down a street and see a guy with the walk. Well, maybe some streets, but see a guy
Yeah.
like with a parrot on his shoulder, like Coco, or it's just like all these people are just larger than life, and like you couldn't even imagine that like they exist. Like George Steele, like is like the animal. Like
Hmm.
how does he function in society? Like how does he pay his bills? Like as a kid, it's just like you just have like such wonder of these characters they created, and and those guys pulled it off. That's the ironic thing about it. Like they weren't like it wasn't like hokey. Like gimmicks got hokey in the early '90s,
Yeah.
But back then, it's like you believed like this guy was, a dog, junkyard dog. He wore a chain and he barked.
Which, I mean, the 90s, that was my time. And maybe it was weird, but like, hey, that was the era that especially Bret Hart was on top. My favorite WrestleMania to this day is WrestleMania 10. That's the benchmark. If you want to say WrestleMania is, start to finish is great, that is my Richter scale. If you ask me, how does it compare to 10? And there we go. You had concise storytelling. You had, Bret, basically facing Owen in arguably the greatest opening match to Mania, right? Yeah. Owen beating him with just like that weird roll up, the victory roll into the sit down and whatever. And it's just like, I beat you, Bret, with slobber hanging out of his mouth and whatever. And then we go to the other story, Bret and Luger basically went over at the same time, allegedly, right? And they have to duke it out to see who goes against the monster Yokozuna, right? And then you get there, Bret beats both Lex and then goes on to beat Yoko with the slipping of the after the bonsai and whatever, and then you have Owen come out with, you got Randy Savage and Scott Steiner pre Big Papa Pump and whatever hoisting Bret on their shoulders, and Owen comes out and is just like, and you think, and I think there was a point where Macho sits on the ropes and kind of tells Owen to come on in, and Owen is just like, and then that set the whole deal off. But like after that, I was so into like Thurman Sparky Plug. I was so into Duke the Dumpster Josie.
Yeah,
and
that 10 was a great one, and it was funny too because it's like that match. Was that first on the card? I don't even remember the order.
Yeah, the first on the card was Bret Owen. Yeah. And because I remember it because you hear like it was Howard Finkel goes from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and everybody goes like it's a fucking pop, right? And then the Rocket theme song comes out, and everybody, and I was just like, and again, there's so many like nuances that make for me the greatest WrestleMania of all time, just as a fan. And that one, everywhere that we went, because we moved around a lot. Like, born in San Francisco, moved to Fiji for a little bit, where my mom is from, Indiana, Georgia, Las Vegas, whatever. Regardless of whatever town that I was in, we went to the video store and got WrestleMania 10.
Videos.
Yes! Oh, yeah!
I have a few of those in storage. In my storage closet there.
Yeah, dude. And shout out to Hillbilly Jim, because he was holding down the fort. Yeah! He was holding down the fort for Coliseum Video, like, after he married whoever the hell.
Yeah, 10 was good. I like 3 the best. Not just because of Andre Hogan, but, everyone says, like, Savage and,
Steamboat. Yeah,
I mean, but the thing I like about it, besides those highlight matches, which are iconic, I like that I can't think of one match at all that wasn't hyped up every weekend on Superstars. Even the low card matches. Remember they had Billy Jack Haynes,
Hercules
for the Full Nelson.
Yes.
I mean, they built every single story throughout that whole program, and before every match, they were able to show the vignettes of what happened before this, that, the other. I mean, prove me wrong, but maybe I'm missing one match or 2 matches, but I think every match on that card had that, like, almost a year build-up before they delivered in, the Silverdome.
Yeah. And I mean, booking that is amazing. The fact that, they basically cut out all of the TV, the pay-per-view, whatever, to make sure that the gate was, there's so many great, like, nuances, like, looking back on it, or, like, everybody was pretty much shut out if you lived in the area. The only way that you could see that particular WrestleMania is buying a ticket, because Vince wanted to ensure that there was going to be a good live gate and everything like that. There's so much brilliance that goes into there. Now, if you're Vern Gagne, you're probably like, that Vince or whatever. But I mean, when you look at it, it's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I watched. it was nice because my town still this day has a theater, and they renovated it and everything. But it was an old classic like theater for I don't know when it's built, but it's been there forever. But before they renovated it, they didn't do that much there, and they used to do the old WWF at the time. Um, uh, I forget what they called it. Basically, like a closed circuit. Closed circuits.
Yeah.
So you just watch it on a movie screen, and it was great. I watched Hogan and Warrior on that same screen, when they did their Mania match, and I was on the fence at the time because like I liked both of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool because living in Pennsylvania, I got besides not going to like the TV tapings in Allentown, we had a place in Scranton that got made famous by The Office.
Yeah.
The town of Scranton. But right in that town, there was a place called the Catholic Youth Center, and they used to do a lot of like live events there. So I would go there a lot to see a lot of the shows there, and it was cool because they loaded the card pretty heavy with the talent they had. At the time, it wasn't just like job matches, then one big main event. They had the card loaded very well, and they got a lot of stars on that. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think Hulk ever was on any of those, but they still had pretty good main events. They had I think it was the B show. Now that I learned more about the history of how they booked the towns and everything back then,
Yeah.
I think it was the B show. But hell, I mean, those main events were classic and great talents that were on the show.
Yeah, we could go on. We could go on. But before we go on, Fernando Lipe has a great question. We're skipping about forward a little bit, but hello, gentlemen. He says, what is the best advice, Goose, that you can give to a referee that is still new to the business, especially if they've never worked TV tapings?
Oh, new to the business, you're not going to be on TV tapings, long and short of it. But I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for your question. I would kind of, every referee came up their own way. Some people, just kind of in a roundabout way kind of jumped into it. I was fortunate, and I didn't really understand the choice that was made at first. But when I came to OVW, I did it on my own dime. I paid for the training school, because they had, an amateur class, and was beyond fortunate. Eugene Nick Dinsmore was the trainer.
Yeah.
They're in the old school, like if you ever watch like the old, I think they put on the network the old OVW with Randy and Batista. I think after they all went on the road and became stars. But we trained in that arena, and that arena started kind of falling in a little bit of disrepair because they weren't doing tapings. They were still building the arena that we performed in.
Yeah.
So long and short of it, the reason that I was glad when I first met Nick, he goes, "Hey, I know you want to be a referee, but I want to teach you to wrestle. Not that I think you're going to be a wrestler." And look at me, I'm not. I'm 5 nothing and 100 nothing pounds. But he wanted me to have respect for what I did. So I learned to bump and learned the moves and whatever. And just so I'd have more respect for the business. Other people came up different ways, and there's nothing wrong with the way they came up. But for me, I would just suggest for a new referee is learn your business. Like, you're not just there to be a referee to be like, oh, I'm on a show and all I have to do is count to 3. No, you're backstage person. You're running errands. You're asking, especially in the early, hey guys, like, can I grab you something to drink or eat? Or, you don't want to be a kiss ass, but you have to be respectful.
Right.
Like earn your stripes for that, pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. Literally and figuratively.
It's just a way to, kind of, just show like you're loyal and you're determined to do something. And if you really care about something, you'd probably do that anyway,
No, absolutely. Which a referee of a different ilk, Herb Dean. I was fortunate enough to be at the gym, Fight Academy in Pasadena, California, where Herb would come in and train, and got to roll in jiu-jitsu with him and what have you. And I was just like, this is before I did any interviews or anything. What what advice would you give me? And he was just like, show up early, buy a ticket, even, especially buy a ticket. Buy a ticket, show up early. There might be somebody that needs coffee. There might be somebody that needs to, set up tables or help with the ring or do a Home Depot run because there's not a part of the ring or whatever. Just do that, right? Figure out who the promoter is. See what you can do to help. Not go expecting anything, but offering something, and.
Yeah, and great advice too. Showing up early. That I was a big practitioner of that, and the fact that Nick, Eugene, taught me how to bump. When I would get there early, there were the people that were more ambitious, I guess, for lack of a better term, talent-wise, and they would show up at the arena and they'd be like, "Oh, hey Goose, like, can you get in there with me? I wanted to try something new," because they knew I could bump and whatever have you. So. That's why I found my path a little bit more beneficial because I help the boys more, like practice something they haven't tried before, and kind of build that rapport with the talent. So I definitely think all the points that we covered are very beneficial for someone starting out. Like just be humble and just pay your dues, and you're gonna get good results out of it.
No, I love it. And thank you for the question, Fernando, and thank you for airing it. Answering it pretty well, Aaron. I appreciate it. Now, in terms of your story, right? Because you have these theater ambition built up through high school, built up through college, right? And then you've got this love and affinity for pro wrestling, right? Was there a moment either during or even after that one kind of circumvents the other and you start your journey down to OVW and what have you? Were you doing indies around the area?
No. What it was is I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Where else would it be? But with an ex-girlfriend from college, and I met a friend of mine that's my friend to this day, Marty, and he was a big wrestling fan, and that's how we connected and everything. And I forget actually what pay-per-view it was, but we got tickets to the pay-per-view where Jericho becomes the Unified Champion.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one that was offhand.
Want to say it was like Judgment Day. Man, I wish I had like George Hermosa of the Wrestling Chatter.
I'm not
but he beats
historian,
he beats Austin and Rock at the same time, right on the same night.
Yeah, so I was there for that pay-per-view with my friend Marty, and we got there early, and we were walking through the through the crowd, outside, and this lady came up and was just kind of like handing out flyers, right? And she walked away, and I looked at it, and it was like Crash Holly, picture on it, and it said, he's opening a wrestling school in North Carolina, probably maybe 45 minutes, away from Charlotte, maybe.
Yeah.
And he was like, I read the ad, and it didn't have prices or anything like that, but it had a phone number. But I said, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity because she's not too far away, from where she gave me the flyer. So I ran up and I was like, is this for real? She's like, oh yeah, and she's like, I was like, well, I want to be a referee. I've been kicking that idea around. So she's like, well, we want to do shows, and so why don't you give us a call this week and we'll make a date to have you come up to the school. And Crash was very nice. I talked to him on the phone for a while, and he said, well, just come up. So I drove up there, and he showed me the ring that he had. I think he had a WE ring at the time, and he had a kind of a factory setup, and he was like, oh, well, these rooms over here, because he wanted students to live there, like a training camp, which I think was an amazing concept. So he walked me through the school, and then he sat me down. He showed me his dark match, where that got him hired, which is kind of cool. Like, not that I needed reminded of who he was. He's one of the greatest, characters on the show at the time. With the hardcore title and all that.
Yes.
But yeah, we sat down. We started talking, dollars and cents, and just be truthful with you, he wanted too much money for training.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, at least I know there's a possibility to get in the business as a referee. So shortly after that, my ex and I broke up, and I moved back to Pennsylvania with my parents, which is very humbling
Yeah.
at any age, really. After you've already been out on your own, but it was a good experience, and I just started working two jobs and just to save money for my next out. Like, oh, am I going to pursue the wrestling business? Am I going to move to LA again and get back? Or move to LA rather. I haven't been there at the time. Um, move out there and pursue acting or whatever have you. And my parents sat me down honestly and said, hey, what do you want to do? Like, what's in your heart? And I was like, I wouldn't mind giving this wrestling deal a go. And they said, well, you're not going to be a wrestler. I said, I know that. But they're like, what could you do in the business? And I said, I was thinking about being a referee. I'm the right height for it. And, I love the business. And, they said, well, find a way to do it and go take the money you've been saving in these two jobs and go do it. So I met with Alpha, looked at his school for a minute. He's in Allentown, which we talked about.
Yeah.
That's not too far for me, so I considered that for a while, and then I got the old Bill Apter magazine.
Yes.
Wow.
PWI. Yeah.
So
Wow. Yeah.
remember that? It was a good magazine. Great.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was all glossy, and they Bill Apter's a hell of a photographer too, and. So I looked at it, and he had an article about OVW, and at the pintail at the end of the story of that article was like, oh well, if you want to train where Batista and Randy Orton and Cena and all these guys are, they have a training class. So I called a number that was on there and left a message, and then Dinsmore called me back, and I told him, I said, hey man, like I want to be a referee. So he's like, why don't you fly down here whenever you can, or come down here, drive down here. So I went there. I drove down and went to see their training class. They had a couple live events that weekend, and talked more with Nick. And I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do this. I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab my stuff and come down in a couple weeks. And, he's like, just call me before you do, and I'll make sure that, we get you right to the building when you get here. So that's where it all started. Yeah.
So you started in OVW, which again had already launched the careers of Batista and Cena and Randy Orton and a litany of others. Dinsmore. That's amazing. Like just to kind of start off with like from nil to kind of getting in a good slot, which at the time they were still a developmental territory, right?
Oh yeah, for many years after too. And so yeah, I joined their amateur class, and it was great because besides Nick working with me, Rob Conway was a big supporter of mine because he knew that I was like into training, even though I knew I wasn't going to be a wrestler. But he saw that I wanted to learn it, and I was so ambitious, and hopefully considered respectful to it. And Rob was on the road at the time, and he would come down and he'd sit through the practices. He'd work out with me in the ring and show me things, and it was great. And I almost kind of looked at it like, I wish I in a roundabout way would have went after wrestling more, but I just knew I was kind of in that ground of like small. Not to say that small guys can't make it, but I almost felt like I had a late start, and this, that, the other. But I really respected Rob and Nick especially for kind of taking me under their wing, and they protected me. They didn't let guys take advantage of me in the ring or whatever, stiff me, anything like that. It wasn't that kind of training. Like teach his own how people train people, but I respected that more than like doing a million Hindu squats and having you run 30 miles a day just to build character. No, you're gonna learn in the ring. Like that's where you make your money, is in the ring, not doing Hindu squats. Do work out on your own. You should already have been doing those on your own before you got in the building to learn the moves and everything. So yeah, I was very fortunate in that respect that I think it's great that people do independent shows. But what I found anyway is in the WE program, which that was at the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted reteach everything all the guys on the independents already learned. No, you're going to learn it the WWE way. And Nick and Rob, especially, came up in the WWE way of training. So I was very fortunate that I didn't have to unlearn a bad habit, even as a referee that I had. So, it was a good way to start everything.
No, absolutely. I couldn't have. I mean, I can't think of a better way to kind of start off in a developmental territory, not having any of the, like you said, the bad habits, and just being exactly almost the template for what they wanted, and you could take bumps like that's. Oh man, you couldn't have started off any better. Now, in terms of like getting down there, let's like set the scene. You talked about Rob Conway and Nick Dinsmore, the Machine, right? There was the Machine and Damager, right? But who's there? Was like Danny Davis there? Was Cornette there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That was Danny, and it was what's kind of a little cool side note on this. When I walked in the door, nervous as anything, because I didn't know if it was going to be like Hogan's story when he broke in, where it's like, oh, they broke my leg, so I went back. Like I didn't know like what I walked into, and a guy that God bless his soul, died. My friend Shad. He was the first person that met me at the door, and Shad's a big kid, and he put me in the corner. He said, "What are you doing here, son? What are you doing here?" Walking in our building. I said, "Oh, sir, I'm sorry. I'm here to be a referee." And hey, I talked to Nick. And he said I could come down. And I was like, "What did I get myself into?" And he just played that intimidation part so well. And then all of a sudden, he just saw like I was ready to piss myself, and it was like, "Hey, man, I'm just kidding. Glad you're here." He gave me a hug, and so he was. He always remained a good friend of mine, and it's so sad when he passed, and God bless his soul, like I said, but yeah, it was just like it was a family in OVW. They all took me in, and I had honestly some of the greatest times of my whole career. Like, yeah, there was great highlights in being WWE, and there was the fame and the notoriety, whatever you want to call it, but it took me a minute to get it because fast forward a little bit, I got invited to join when they got the main school that they did all the TV tapings.
Right.
I was invited to that class of trainees that were WE contracted, but I wasn't contracted. But they said, "Oh, we need a ref in these practices." So even there, then Rip Rogers, great, one of the greatest players ever, he was in charge of that. So I worked a shoot job at Humana Insurance. So I scheduled my work with those managers at the time so I could go to their morning practice, do my shoot job, and then if we had a show that night, they would let me trade out hours to make the show. Like, they were such an accommodating company to work for, and they were probably like, a little bit weirded out, like, "Oh, I need time off to wrestling train." They're probably like, "Who is this guy we just hired?" But nonetheless, yeah, I did that and did that schedule for a long time, and I was just like, when am I going to get a contract? And I'd talk to my parents and be like, "Oh, I'm making this progression," but they were like, "Well, we're glad you have a real job, quote unquote real job, but at what point are you going to stop trying this wrestling thing?" And I said, I don't know. I mean, the years are starting to stack on, and I haven't gotten any call up or anything. So one day I was at my job, and I get a call, firstly from Danny Davis. And he's like, "I met with Johnny Ace today in Louisville. We went to lunch, and he said one of the main topics I want to talk to him about was you." And he, I love Danny and dude to this day. He lives in Clearwater, and once COVID is over, I can't wait to see him and his wife Julie. They've been nothing but a support system for me and my career. But so we haven't gotten together since they moved here. But nonetheless, Danny called me and he was like, "Yeah, I met with Johnny Ace, and I told him one of the key points is that you have to hire Goose." And he's like, "I'll just do the impression. All right, Danny, I'll listen to you, and if you think the kid's worth hiring, I'll hire him. That's my Johnny Ace. Not the best, but anyway. So then he contracted me, and then I, still was under developmental for a while. But yeah, that's where it all started.
And then, I mean, because you were in a class that had contracted talent. So, I mean, who were some of the names that were kind of there with you?
Oh God, you name them. We had, let's see, we had Roadkill, we had Deuce and Domino, we had Shad, we had Tank Tolan,
Wow.
we had Seth Skyfire, we had Chet the Jet, Punk.
Punk, yeah.
I mean, it's like the who's who. Really, honestly, like I look back and I'm glad I did this because I wasn't doing it from a mark perspective, but we do like these live events in like towns around OVW or around Louisville rather.
Yeah.
We had such fun on the road. Al was our trainer, and I rode in the ring truck with him, so that was a wealth of knowledge and comedy
Yeah.
in the same. Because Al's a unique guy and a friend of mine to this day, but I learned so much from riding with him. Like, just for a quick side note, he was like,
Yeah.
because he knew I loved WrestleMania 3. He goes, Goose, what's your favorite match on WrestleMania 3? I said, oh, Savage and Savage and Steamboat. And he's like, well, that shouldn't be your favorite. I said, well, how are you to tell me what my favorite is? He goes, the biggest match on that card should have been your favorite is Hogan and Andre because that's the one that drew the house. At the end of the day,
Mm,
guys have made the most money, and that's the one that people should admire more, not just from a work rate, but from a business model. And like just like nuggets like that he would throw out there that were so neat to listen to. And like, he was not like a guy because he wrote the TV after Cornette left.
yeah.
And he'd be like, and it was so flattering because he was like, guys, not just me, but other people that rode in the truck, like, hey, like, here's an angle I'm trying to build. What would you guys do with this aspect of it? And he would take advice, and I was like, so like flattered because like, not that I'm like a booking genius by any means or ever booked the territory, but he would take our opinions seriously, and it was very flattering. So yeah, it was the whole environment was just just such good times. But yeah, I would take pictures with the guys, and I look
Yeah.
on them now, and I'm like, it wasn't to be like I said a mark, but it was like I'm so glad I did because I have those memories that otherwise are just up here and not like in an actual printed photo that I have.
No, I do the same, and everybody, and it's weird. Like it's weird as I'm saying this, and it's not from a pretentious deal, but I've got friends that work in Bellator MMA, UFC, WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, like in whatever, and it's not like whatever. It's just like okay, what that shows to me is much like you. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you here is like I have friends. It's almost anxiety inducing going across any one of my social media page because I've got friends doing awesome shit all the time. Right, and if it's not just here in North America, well, people in Scotland and Finland and whatever, and I'm like and again, everyone is a mark. Everybody that gets into any this, I'm a fan first, right? But those pictures are important, right? Like so when Boz Rutan is like, "Hey, pal." Holy shit! Burnett's a friend. Like it's weird, but I get crap from all of my friends because I am the selfie guy, the gratuitous selfie. Yeah, yeah.
When they had I was fortunate to be up on TV when they had the guest hosts every week.
Yes.
And man, for me, especially having like the theater and I'm into music, I'm not a musician, but I love musicians.
Uh huh.
But for me, it was like, oh my God, like they had a Pee Wee Herman who I marked out for so huge. And like, I even wore a Pee Wee t shirt when I, oh my God, it was such a cheeseball. But it was so nice because I got the first picture with Paul Rubens. And his assistant came up and said, oh, I took a picture too. Can I have your address? And I want to send you our picture when I get it, framed up and stuff like that. So she took my address, and every year since I get Christmas card from or holiday card, whatever you want to call it, from Pee Wee. And I'm like, man, that's so cool. But yeah, I get to meet like Cheech and Chong and like David Hasselhoff and
Yeah.
like all these like celebrity people that I grew up watching. So that was a really cool time period that I was up there. That I got to like meet these people I grew up watching on TV, and then in the same respect, being on TV with legends I grew up with, and
Yeah.
they'd have like the Hall of Famers come through. So it was just such a great like dichotomy of like sports and entertainment, even though they're sports and entertainment. Just seeing all these people from Hollywood and all this, it was a real trip and a real fortunate time that I got to be there for what they were doing at the time. That promotion, that cross promotion kind of thing. So it was cool.
No, I think it is. And again, it's cliche because Shawn Michaels, kind of coined it in his first world title run as the boyhood dream, right? But it's a boyhood dream. You're here with the people, and I think it's a sentiment that has been echoed to me, countless times where it's like we're people that you were heroes of, right, or heroes to you, become your. It's commonplace, and they become your contemporaries, right? And that's what we should work to. It's just like not just like this person has done cool shit, but I also to kind of feel like I'm a part of this whole kind of scenario. I need to do some cool shit too.
Yeah, that was a weird balance to have because they brought Piper back for a stretch when I was there, and I'd share locker rooms with them and just be like, I wanted to pick his brain so much, but I was like, man, let the talent do that. Like, I'd just do it from a fan perspective. And
Yeah.
Probably a fair usage of his time when a guy that's trying to come up in from the mid card or what have you.
Yeah.
Time spent with Piper would be more beneficial to them. So I didn't cross that bridge, but in the same respect, especially looking back at it, I was years after he died.
Yeah.
I had some conversations with him, but I never really like picked his brain as much as I could. But like his psychology in the ring was so spot on, but he's like a prime example because that's someone that I grew up loving, and I referenced Heenan earlier, and but that was a nice thing because they bring guys back, and it's like, man, like this guy I grew up watching, so you had to walk the line between you don't want to be like Markish,
Right.
I'm in the same profession you are, way down the totem pole of
Yeah.
my job title, but yeah, it was kind of hard, for some, for me to like be around some guys, but in the same respect, like all these action figures I have, it's like, wow, I actually just met the real person and I'm sharing a locker room with them. Like that childhood dream come true. That's where it registered to me. It's like, man, I have, your toy like on my wall.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I have one interaction with Piper, and I just how genuine that guy is, or was, right? There's a NWA replica, right?
Ooh.
And it's kind of cool. I've got like Shane Douglas. This is the most eclectic mix of like world champions. There's a superstar Billy Graham. There's whatever Terry Funk. But I actually handed it. It was a convention that we had here in LA, probably 2011. Russell reunion at like the LAX Marriott, right? And I give it to Piper, right? And I was like, I don't know what this means to you. And he just goes like that, and I was like, oh, Starcade, you and Valentine, and he gives me a hug. He's talking to Terry Funk, who also signed this deal, and they give me a hug. Terry Funk and Piper give.
Hold it up again. I want to see it more.
There we go. Here it is, and
That's
so
tremendous.
so the Funk one is kind of smudged, but it's there, right?
That's awesome, man.
And then on the backside is the hot rod. Let's see if we can get it there.
That's
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a belt mark, so that's it. I've got an MMA title here. It's all weird, but again, we're all marks, different degrees, right? You gotta be.
Yeah, exactly. You don't do something that you don't have a passion for,
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is amazing, right? You start off OVW. You start your career as a referee there, learning all the good traits, and then legends like the Nightmare Danny Davis, and hey, he's big in Japan, Johnny Ace, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So then does that get your call up? Because I mean, especially on OVW, that's kind of the next phase. Was that your kind of your pinnacle? Was like, I need to get called up?
Yeah, it was just more or less like, I was too stubborn to quit. And I think Danny especially realized that in me. And he's like, well, we're not getting rid of this kid. Might as well give him a job, So I was only technically contracted for, at that time, maybe like 6, 7 months. And then
Mm-hmm.
John came down and was like, I won't do the impression anymore. He's like, all right, guys, we're moving all you guys down to FCW. Steve Kern's opening the school, and we're severing our tie with OVW. And I understand business is business, but that was hard for me. That was really hard because, like I said, like Danny and his wife Julie, they're family to me, and those
Yeah.
fans that came to every one of our tapings, I'm still like friends with them today. A lot of them, like we built not just the wrestlers and performers up there, even the audience and the owners, and like
Yeah.
we were all just like a cohesive unit. So it was a really scary proposition. Like, okay, well, let's now go to another school and kind of start over, and we're meeting people from Deep South we've never met or worked.
Mm-hmm.
But they were so welcoming, and Steve Kern and Tom Pritchard, and we had Billy Kidman and Norman Smiley, who I love to death. Like, I love
Oh,
those guys. So I knew that, like, hey, like, you have to go to a different place to learn a different skill and work with new talent. So it's almost like the territory days. You can't necessarily stay there forever, even though you're going to hold on to these fond memories. So yeah, I was there for at FCW for a while, and did the same thing with doing live events around the area. We did our TV as well, and then we had Dusty Rhodes come in, and just it was a tremendous opportunity just to work with new people, meet new people, and then I one day got the call like, hey, we want you to go on the road, and then almost less than a year later, I did my first WrestleMania with JBL and Rey Mysterio, and it was JBL's retirement match.
what?
And it's so cool because I was such the timid guy in the locker room and backstage, and they were nervous because they wanted JBL to jumpstart the match. And when I'm doing the instructions, holding the title,
Yeah.
JBL does the boot to Ray, and I had to separate JBL from attacking Ray, and I had to yell at him, "You get back!" and this, that, the other. And they're like, Jamie Noble is the agent, and he's like, you're kind of a timid guy. Do you think you're gonna be able to yell at JBL? And I said, yeah, I'll be able to yell at him. I love him, but he's the guy that pushes your buttons. Yeah, no problem. We got along fine, but I was like, I'm the rep. I got to go off on him, and it was fun. And Jamie ribbed me afterwards, and Chavo and Ray came up to me after the match because I walked the side ramp because they had the big entrance ramp. So I just went to the side, and I could get to the back that way. And they met me like right when I got in the back, and they're like, Jamie's like, man, has Vince seen you yet? And I said, no, why? He's like, oh, you might want to just leave the building. I said, what do you mean? He's like, we told you to be aggressive with John. You weren't aggressive at all. And I was like, I thought I was. I was yelling at him, this, that, the other. And I'm sweating bullets, man. I'm like, oh my God, I'm dead in the water. I'll never work in this town again, kind of thing. And they just saw like the torture they were putting me through. And they just had to break and say, oh man, no, it's cool. You did good. And, I gave him a big hug, and I said, don't ever do that to me again. I was nervous enough being around 80,000 people in an arena for my first WrestleMania, and I had enough pressure on me, and then you made me think like, oh, I screwed everything up.
Hey, you know what? A great moment isn't without a rip. You know, it wouldn't be the wrestling business if it weren't, good sir. You know, but that's amazing. Like, 6 months, and then you're essentially reffing a world title match on WrestleMania. To me, JBL doesn't get enough credit, right? Obviously, he gets a. Oh yes, because the way that I look at it, right?
Outside.
Well, the way that I look at it, right, is like if you take the archetype of Ted DiBiase, right, and Ted DiBiase is Vince, right? Then you had incarnations. You had, Southern Ted DiBiase in JBL. Then you had Latino, Mexican JBL, Ted DiBiase in Alberto Del Rio, right? So, like, those are, if you go like the archetype of like Superstar Billy Graham to Hogan to Scott Steiner and a few even in between them, that's where it goes. It's just like sincerity is, flattery is the most it's a thing. Yeah, there's a euphemism there that I'm not getting. But yeah, well.
He was such a well-manufactured heel, and like he played that character so well, and it was great. And I like John. Like John, like all of us, he would give us a hard time and stuff. But at the end of the day, like he was always really good to me, and I was fortunate to have his last match, his retirement match. So he quit after that match, on camera, but in real life too. And I was honored. I know it was a 30-second match. Like people were like, "Oh, it was a squash," but I'm like, no, like I don't like. Not that I didn't like my Mania 26 match. I was with Punk and Ray, and I love Punk and I love Ray, and that was when Punk was doing Straight Edge Society. So Gallows and Serena.
Yeah.
Great friends that were out there, so it's like, man, like I love this. Like the OVW crew is like doing a WrestleMania match. Like it was such like and that match was a lot longer than 30 seconds. So I got to take some time and look around and just take it in. Cause I'm like, oh man, it's not often that you perform in front of 80,000 people on both venues. WrestleMania 25, I blinked and it was over. 26, I could kind of look up and be like, wow, there's a lot of people here.
My goodness, that's I mean, it's hard to come off that perch, and that's an eagle soaring high. But I definitely, because you touched on FCW, this is like obviously pre NXT. They're still trying to figure out the territory system between Ohio Valley, Deep South, and FCW. What became FCW? So I mean, do you have any fun memories, or like you want to encompass the experience of being at FCW?
Yeah, I really liked it because, like, and I'm not blowing smoke by any means at my own butt, but it's like I'm a people person, so I was like to talk to people, and like you and I talked about, we're fans at heart. If you're not in business and you don't respect the business, then you're not a fan. If you're doing it for a paycheck and you don't care about what you're doing, I know there's a lot of people that make a lot of money in that mentality, but for me, it's like, you could weed those people out in a heartbeat. People that, I don't mind someone learning a business and then learning to love it that didn't know it before. I don't have a problem with that. Like, if for some reason I became like, not that I ever would, but like all of a sudden people are like, oh, like you have a hell of an arm, you should be a baseball pitcher. I don't watch baseball. I don't know baseball.
Right.
If I was so talented, some hidden talent that I had, I would learn the business. So anyway, my point to everything is, with FCW, I had a lot of good rapport with the fans, and it was like maybe like 3 weeks in, and all of a sudden, like and it happened in OVW, and I wasn't like, I didn't want it really to happen in a roundabout way, but I guess I had a catchy nickname in Goose, so OVW and FCW, the fans are like cheering for me in the matches. Sometimes I'm like, guys, shut up! Like cheer for them. Like, not that I was over any more than just being, cordial and friendly with people, but it was flattering, but it was embarrassing in the same respect. It's like, man, like, I'm the guy. Like Edge gave me the best advice when he came down to FCW one time. We did a match, and I refereed it so he could see some of the talent. And one of the matches I refereed, I went up to Adam and I said, hey, man, I was like, you know, what, what about me? Like, what do you think about what I did in there? And he's like, oh, to be upfront with you, I didn't even notice you. And I kind of got the boo boo face. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I suck. You didn't even notice me. And he saw that in me and he's like, no, man, it's a good thing. He's like, because you're not the one selling tickets. So it's a good thing that if you did something distracting that wasn't good,
Yeah.
that's when I would have noticed you. By me not noticing you, that's actually a compliment. And I love that explanation. And that's what I took with me going on the road. Like, you know, I wasn't there. No one was paying money to see me, justifiably so, but,
Hmm.
but yeah, to circle back, yeah, it was just nice. Like, cause we started building that same family and it was just a different cast of characters in FCW, but the takeaway with me is like, man, like, you're not going to be friends with everybody in this profession. It's
Yeah.
true of any job. But I met some of the most fun people, and a lot of them are still friends to this day. And I had so many experiences that, despite any bad scenarios, which anyone's going to have at any job, I had the time of my life, man. And I met people that are, you know, would give a shirt off my back to that are just lifelong friends. And, I would never have even met them if I didn't just pack my car one day from Pennsylvania and move to OVW just to be like, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's see where this road leads. So, take risks and reap rewards.
I love it. I mean, I loved you before, but that's it. And I'm also that dude. Probably, if you worked Bakersfield, I was probably one of those probably asshole fans. I was like, Goose, every time you
Oh,
ran out
no,
there.
no, never an asshole. Like, anyone that, like, and this is the thing, like, I understand, like, there's a way to go about things, and like I was always flattered. People would be like, I'd be like, "You want my autograph, or you want a picture of me?" Like, and I understand when like these guys, because I travel with them, and it's hard. I saw how they operate their lives, and I traveled. I got the the Kali assignment, we call it, because he was so big he couldn't drive. And maybe he didn't have a license, but I'd get a call from our talent, coordinator. She'd be like, "Hey, Goose, good news." I said, "What?" She goes, "I got you a free car and free hotel throughout the week." I said, "And where do I pick up Kali?" She goes, and but I loved him, and I'm so proud that he's going in the Hall of Fame, like a lot of these men and women are. But yeah, he was obviously he stands out like a sore thumb anywhere he goes. But it'd be after the show, it'd be 2 in the morning, and he'd be like, "I want to go to Denny's," and I'm like, man, so even after you take an hour to eat, a million stacks of pancakes and eggs and everything like that, it's going to be another hour with fans taking pictures of you. But he was
Hmm.
always very generous with people. But I saw, like, how these guys operate. They're constantly, and, the fans, pay their bills in the end of the day. But
Yeah.
no taxing on yourself. You're trying to have a meal, you're trying to get on a flight, and, you know, so a lot of fans that I encountered, were polite. Like I didn't see a lot of rude people, but in the same respect, it's like, man, I have to board this plane. Like, these guys trying to get on flights, and it's like, how many pictures can I take before I lose my flight? And
Yeah.
so, there's a balance. I think a lot of WE fans are more educated now and they know how to approach people in the proper way. And there's enough fan conventions when pre-COVID and, all the WrestleMania access stuff. So they get their opportunity to meet the
Right.
people. It's more the on the street stuff where it's like, you got to pick and choose your battles.
And were you kind of because I want to say it was like either Frenchie Martin or Tim White that was like
Frenchie Martin, what
Andre's.
a reference.
Yes, like Tim White even was Andre's attaché where he would have to kind of swat people away when the boss was not in the best of moods. So did you
That's
ever
Timmy
have to?
White. That's Timmy White.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
did
Timmy
you?
White. I was very fortunate because when I got up there, it was the dying days of what's called the pay window, where you could go and get an advance on your check. And I didn't do it too often. Every once in a while, you want extra spending money on the road. But it was great because Timmy White was a phenomenal referee, and him and Sergeant Slaughter ran the pay window. So I would just go over and just sit with them while guys got their payoffs, just so I could talk to them. Like Timmy, like just find nuances about refereeing, and he gave me a lot of critique. Sarge, because he's a icon. So,
Yes.
like I said, I was very fortunate that I got to work with a lot of people that I grew up loving and admiring, and buying action figures of. But yeah, but Timmy was the handler, and Timmy had great stories about Andre. It's like everything that you think like, oh, that's folklore. That's it got passed on through the ages. That this can't be true. It's true, and half the stories that Timmy told me aren't even out there. And that's that's for you to interview him one day, and maybe he'll share some of
Oh.
those that I was fortunate to hear. But
Oh, that would be a great one.
yeah,
Especially, I mean, you're talking your first Mania with JBL. Well, Timmy White's bar, got torn up by the APA, and he got all new shit. So shout out
yeah,
to Timmy White
yeah.
working the boys. I'm just saying.
He was an amazing, or is an amazing guy. I haven't seen him in many years, but yeah, he treated me very well, and he was a wealth of knowledge and stories. Like he was also great to talk to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Now, in terms of great memories of being on the main roster, was there like a match that you can point to and go like, I was there. Now you mentioned you started off with the big one, a world title match, your first WrestleMania with Mysterio and JBL. Like that's an iconic situation to be in. But like, what stands out to you in terms of your experience? Like, what was the most fun to you?
You know what's funny is that's a ironic question that you brought that up. I did something when I was on the road that I didn't do from a diary perspective. I did it from in a business. I want to be paid for what I do. So every time I'd go on the road, I kept a road journal, and I'd be like, okay, at Raw, I did the dark match, I did this, that, the other. Honestly, just so when I got my check, I could check mark it. Okay, I got paid for this, and if I didn't get paid for something, I'd call the office and be like, "Oh, you forgot to pay me for this match." So it wasn't really done from like a fan perspective or a diary perspective. It's just like a money perspective. But I found that thing recently, and I flipped through it, and I'm like, oh, I forgot that I did this match, or whatever. But the one that stood out to me, and I do remember this, it was a live event. I don't offhand remember everybody that was in it, and you'll understand why in a moment. But Undertaker was. It was a 6-man tag, and um, he started doing a thing where he was not tagged in, and he was pacing up and down. And I kept looking over at him, and he was making eye contact with me. And I thought, man, like he's trying to tell me something. He wants me to tell the guys in the ring something. He wants me to communicate this, something. So I kept going up to him a little closer than I should have for his character, and persona, I should say. And I was kind of looking at him or putting my back a little bit closer to his corner, and he wasn't saying anything, but he kept pacing back and forth, and it was kind of out of the norm for like his
Gimmick.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, his gimmick. Yeah. So one of the about midway through the match, I got a little bit closer to him, maybe like, oh, like maybe I'm not hearing what he's saying, and he stayed in character voice wise. He goes, "Me and you are gonna have a little talk after this match," and I was like, white as a ghost.
Yeah.
Probably had a Hershey kiss in my pants.
Yeah. I would too.
And I'm just nervous. I was like, oh my God. Like I couldn't even like concentrate on the match. And we got through it. And I hid out in the locker room for like 5 minutes. I'm like, all right, go, find them and just take your beat. No, not that you do,
Yeah.
but take your verbal lashing.
Yeah.
So I went back, and he's getting his tape cut off and by our trainer. And I was like, oh, Taker, I'm so sorry for anything. And he's like, no. And now that we know Taker being, he showed his true persona to
Yeah.
the audience in general. But so I'm not like breaking kayfabe or anything. But yeah, he was just like, oh no, man. And he's like, it's cool, but you have to understand, like with my character, you have to be scared of me and try to stay so far away from me. And I said, no, I totally know that. I said, and I explained my perspective that I thought you were trying to tell me something. He's like, nope. If I'm going to tell you something, you're going to know. I don't need to be pacing back and forth. But he didn't say it in a cocky way. It's just,
Yeah.
he's been there, done that, got the T-shirt. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really great just to work with him, man. Like, an icon, obviously, and just someone I grew up watching and, appreciating beyond belief his career and God, the stuff that he went through. I saw it. I saw all that stuff. I saw him being, barely able to walk backstage and
Wow.
with Michelle from OVW and, but man, I have nothing but respect for Taker, man. He's just a hell of a person, a hell of a talent, and just a legendary gimmick. There will never be another gimmick as good as his.
There will never be another anything. It's so weird. Like, I think it was on the bump where, they're inducting, Kane, right? And it's like a split screen and whatever. And it's weird to me. Yeah, all these years later, even though there was like corporate Kane and whatever, I go back to like that Bad Blood pay-per-view and like these two hating each other and like they're regular dudes. Like that first, I think it was like, before he did The Last Riot, he did Austin's podcast right after a pay-per-view or whatever, and I watched it back like 3 times and I was just in disbelief because me as a 36-year-old father and husband and whatever, I'm not entirely convinced that if I shut the lights off I will hear a gong and a "Ooh, yes!" And even more so that Percy is not with us anymore. It's probably more of a likelihood now than it ever was before.
Yeah. I was fortunate too with Percy because he was he came back when I was there too. So there's another legend in the locker room that I was like, man, it is great.
Oh man! So in terms of just like hallmarks of your career, what is the part of your kind of run that you're most proud of?
Just honestly, the fact that I made it. I mean, I someone put it in perspective when I first got there. I think it was 8 referees were there. I had one of 8 jobs in the world. That's not to blow smoke up my own butt again, but I had one of 8 jobs in the entire world that 1,000 people in the audience, someone would be like, "Oh, I'd love to have that job," So I got to do it, So that was like the biggest perk of it all.
No, I didn't mean to gloss over, but one of my favorite references when I watch old Monsoon and Heenan stuff, right, is the pay window reference. And I think almost like a Vern Gagne dropkick, like of all the things that could be rehashed, that is not a thing that's rehashed. Because to me, as a kid, it was like real consequences. This guy, if they didn't win the match,
oh, they didn't get the
yeah, they didn't go to the pay window. I'm amazed that it's an actual thing, and Slaughter and Tim White, during your run, that's who administered it. That's amazing.
Yeah, but it wasn't like if you won the match, you got more money. It was just like, oh, you knew what you were being paid before you went out there, and if you were like, oh well, I need a little more money because my rent-a-car was more this week than I anticipated, and don't want to put everything on the credit card, So that was mainly what it was, but it was still like you felt like an old I shouldn't use the phrase, but you felt like an old carny.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Carney's king. I mean, it was a fun interview that I did a couple years back at a indie show called Bumps and Bruises in downtown LA, and it was a match between Tyler Bateman, who's now in Ring of Honor, and Simon Gotch, formerly of the Vaudevillains, right? And I was trying to get them to use Carney strong style, because we've heard of ghetto strong style, Japanese strong style, but here's 2 Carney gimmicks. This is where it takes off. It went over like a fart in church. Yeah.
You gotta try something new. I mean, you don't know what's gonna stick to the wall. I mean, on paper, like we talked about earlier, on paper, half these gimmicks they had, like, my friend Wes came down. Wes Adams, he was a referee in WWE too.
Yeah.
Him and his wife came down here last weekend and hung out and stayed with me and everything. And we talked a lot about the idea of like, just like how crazy it was in that time. And I use the example of Harley Race. I'm like, every wrestling fan knew who Harley Race was. Even if you only watched WF, you knew who he was before he got there.
Hmm.
And I brought up specifically to Wes. I'm like, what do you think that conversation was like with Vince, where he's like, Harley had a name on his own, and Vince be like, "All right, pal, we're gonna call you the king, and we're gonna put a robe and a crown on you." Like I probably would guess Harley's answer was probably like, "I did it because of the paycheck," But that Vince has, the grapefruits he talks about, but it must have been a little bit of an odd conversation where he came to some of these guys that were already established on their territories. And then they came into WF at the time to be like, okay, well, I want you to do this. And these guys, like I said, they're probably like, oh, we just, we're happy to get the paychecks we're getting at that time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
at least Harley didn't get polka dots. Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard stories one way or the other about that. Yeah, it's like, but there really though, it's like you just had to look at things like who knew what was going to take. Like
Hmm.
they had a lot of failed projects, but who knew if Max Moon, if you ever seen that when Conan did it, like that could have been like the biggest thing ever, but it wasn't. But they don't know. They just throw things to the wall like any entertainment business does. They don't know until they give it a shot. But yeah, but it was always fun. That's what I liked as a kid. Like some of my favorite characters were guys that were just short-lived gimmicks, like your Outback Jacks, and
Hmm.
like it's like they just tried anything they could just to make a buck.
Hey, I mean, was Steve Curran went from being a fabulous
Yeah.
one to being Skinner.
I loved the Skinner character, not just because I worked with Steve or under Steve, but I loved it, man. And he lived the part. Like he knows how to gator hunt, so it wasn't too big of a stretch for Steve. But I love watching. That's why I love like I talked about earlier, like YouTube. And I don't
Yeah,
personally have the network or anything,
yeah.
but I find so much gold on YouTube that
Hmm.
I'll be like, oh, like I'll come across like a match or a promo and be like, yeah, I'll watch this. And they'll be like, oh, if you like this, you might like this. And I'm like, yeah. So then I call it the YouTube vortex. I'm like, oh, I find myself like watching like for 3 hours of stuff when I want to watch a 5-minute video. So, it just goes to tell you. I mean, they have so much content, and it's really like the soundtrack of my life. Like I remember watching each and every one of those things, and to revisit things like you forgot about, or
Hmm.
you happen to miss that week's show, just to like revisit all the classic stuff. For me, like it's just a tremendous thing just to circle back and be able to have that at your fingertips.
Oh man, I that's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Now, before we go, I want to know in terms of do you have a top five favorite wrestlers? Just personally, it doesn't have to be people that you work with. It's just historical context for you. If you're to go like my favorite wrestlers were,
Yeah.
who would be? Actually, let's do top 10 because I think five is kind of containing. So let's do top 10.
Yeah, and I see that people say the Mount Rushmore. That's too few to
Yeah.
list. And I think it's kind of subjective too. It's like who's the greatest of a entertainment business. It's kind of like the Oscars. Like who's the best actor this year? It's like they're all great.
Yes.
But yeah, for me personally, just the people that like I just gravitated to was Savage, Bobby Heenan, as we talked about. Let's see, Piper, what we talked about. Can't go without Hogan. I saw Hogan last weekend at his new restaurant, and
Yeah.
it's like meeting Superman. It's like wow, like you're a real person.
Wow.
So where are we at? We're at
We got four.
all right. So let's see, Mr. Perfect.
Oh.
Um, let's see, Andre. Can't go without Andre. Taker and Jeff Hardy is a huge one. And let's see, let's pick someone a little newer. I'm gonna go with Bray Wyatt.
Okay. And then you got one more.
Oh, one more.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, gotta go with Bulldog.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, of the 10, who have you worked with, and do you have a favorite story?
Um, so I worked backstage with Piper when he was there. I worked I worked on the road with Jeff, him and Matt.
Yeah.
Didn't do a lot of Jeff's matches because Jeff was main event guy at the time, and
Right.
the way they did things is the newer refs didn't. They changed it up. I see when I flip by, I see that it's like, oh, like the new refs doing the main event. Like they have a different structure since forever that I was there. But yeah, yeah, I worked one way or the other with most of the guys in one capacity or another. Obviously, like some of the legends I mentioned, unfortunately, have passed. But yeah, it was nice because I got to be part of that history. I got to meet like I became very good friends with Joe Henning, and we would talk about like his dad and all the ribs he played and everything.
Yeah.
So I felt like I kind of knew him by proxy. I knew Kurt by proxy, but I never worked with him. I just
Yeah. I think that's, but again, Joe Henning or Curtis Axel for some of you guys, I mean, that's lineage that could never be replicated.
yeah.
And in terms of favorites, Fearless Women CEO, Fearless Women MMA CEO, Libby Canella, just says China. China. So, yeah, she loves China. So,
With the wire and I.
yeah, yes, I know, man. But dude, you have been so gracious. But there have been a lot of people, both professionally and personally, that have helped you both in life and in profession. So let's get some shout outs out of the way, my man.
Yeah, I mean, I I've been beyond fortunate, and just to I named a few people, and that by no means encompasses the people that just everyone honestly that I came across, good, bad, or indifferent. Most of them good, very few bad, and few just indifferent that just didn't really come across my path. But no, I've been so fortunate, man. Like I said, I mean, the memories I have and obtained, and a few friendships that I've gained out of this business, you know, I'm very fortunate, and it's just no matter what happens, I'm not a bitter person by any means. I got to live my life and a dream, and it didn't work out, a long career, but you can't ever take away what I experienced. So, and the long and short of it, it's like, I was just so happy just to be part of the business and just have the interactions with the talent I did, and just the memories that I obtained from that. So to single one person out or a couple people out like that, it's impossible to do. Everyone's been influential in my career because in one way or the other, So yeah, it just it's a blessing. It really was.
I love it. It's all encompassing. That's usually what I tell even like fighters. It's like thank the promoters, thank the places that you work, thank your mom and dad, and you should be good. Like
Right.
everything else, you can kind of figure out. So
Right.
yeah. Now one last question: where did the Goose nickname originate from?
It's a dumb story. So I was in high school and I was driving my dad's car. I've only owned two cars in my life. That's some Goose trivia. I've only owned two cars in my life, which is insane. But anyway, so when I was in high school, I didn't have a car and I was driving my dad's car. I was going down the road and I look up and a flock of geese looked like they were like coming down to like to my windshield. And I'm like, are these things gonna fly away or whatever? And I'm concentrating on them. And then all of a sudden, I look down, and a car was approaching me in the other lane, and I had veered over to that lane, and I was like literally feet from uh, head-on-head collision. So I veered off the road real quick, and I'm like, oh my god, and my heart was jumping down my chest. Well, I recanted that story later that evening with my friends, and I'm an educated person. I don't know why I said it like this, but I said, and then a bunch of gooses came down. And they're like, it's not gooses, it's geese.
Geese.
So they just started saying, hey, Goose Man, hey, what's up? Hey, Goose. And it just kind of stuck. so when I got to OVW, since Nick was down when he was booking a live event, Dinsmore was down, and he body in the battle royal. He's like, I already have enough refs. Will you be a body in the battle royal? And you know how to go over the top rope. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'll do it, man. That's cool. So he said, what do you want to be called? And I said, I don't care. So he made up. I wish I'm not just storing the name. I don't remember what it was, but it was the most horrible name. And I said, I got to the back and I said, Nick, if I do another one of these, call me anything but not that name. And he's like, do you have a nickname or anything? I was like, yeah, people in high school called me Goose. So he's like, oh, well, you're Goose Mahoney. And when I got to WE, they gave me the name, kept my legal first name, Aaron. But since they wanted to have character names for referees, even, they said, all right, well, Danny Davis trained you. So for a couple weeks, I was Aaron Davis on TV. And then Joey Styles ran the website at the time, and he pulled me aside, and he's like, I had you on the website as Aaron Davis, but JR has already called you Goose Mahoney a few times on the show. He's like, I even asked permission. I just changed your name on the website to Goose Mahoney because that's a cooler name than Aaron Davis. No disrespect to Danny, it's not even his real last name, but it's But so I got fortunate that I got my gimmick name as a referee. But yeah, it's just what stuck.
I love it because it's much like me. I mean, nobody who knows me calls me Adam. It's all Woods, and it just so happened that I was in ROTC in high school, so last name first. Yeah. What branch? What branch?
Army.
Me too.
Yeah. They had me go to the college pool, the high dive.
Yes.
Unloaded M16 to jump in the water, and you had to keep the thing afloat. And we go to the firing range and stuff. I had fun with it, man. It was a blast. Like my dad was, he didn't serve in wartime, but my dad was in the Army, so I got a little taste in a very minor way of my father's training and stuff like that. But it was in a college environment.
That's okay. So my dad was stationed in Korea during Nam. We got drafted, right, in the Army. I also went to an Army ROTC program, and we both love wrestling. See, Goose, this is why we're friends.
Yeah, I'm digging the friendship right now. It's awesome. If I move to LA, and I will one day, I guarantee you, we'll definitely get
I'm here. Let's go. Wherever you want to go, we're going. Okay?
Let's get rid of this COVID thing, man, so we can start living our lives again,
Absolutely. Goose, it's been amazing to talk to you. Thank you for sharing so many cool stories. And again, thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. But Goose, before we go, for people to reach out to you on the interwebs, what's the best place to do so?
I'm an old man, so I guess it's an old man platform. I'm a Facebook guy. I don't know my handle offhand though. Oh, sorry. But I'm not hard to find. I'm not.
Yeah, and you also have the Twitter. You're on there.
I try to keep a little up to date. Like I told you before we started this thing, I was like, I'm notoriously so bad with technology that it's because I counted 3 for a living for years. I didn't know all the technology, It got smarter and I just got dumber as the years went by. So
I counted 3 for a living. Oh, that's so.
That was my job to count to 3 for a living. I could have dropped out in first grade.
10 points there. Oh, that's amazing. Now, thank you for doing this, bro. This is amazing.
Thank you so much, honestly, for having me. And it's a real pleasure to talk to you. Like I said, this is the kind of thing I love about this business. It's you get to meet cool people in all factions of life. And, I'm very honored and privileged that you reached out to me. And, I'd love to do anything with you again.
Oh man, I'm gonna take you up on that, good sir. So I'm just saying. But thank you guys for watching us here at the According to Woods podcast. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And Goose, you're subscribed, right?
Oh yeah.
Hell yes.
I won't miss out on these gems.
See, I'm just saying, I love it. So be like Goose, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. But if you don't believe me, don't believe Goose, and I don't know why you wouldn't, well, here's Pro Wrestler Zeta Zhang.